Sir,
Your 10 o'clock meeting with the investors. Cancel it. Let them no longer.
The morning sun rose over the city of Johannesburg like liquid gold. It painted the tall buildings with warm light. It touched the windows of the great Mensah towers, where one of the most powerful men in all of Africa sat behind his desk. His name was Richard Mensah. He was a man of 53 years. His skin was dark like the richest soil of Ghana, where his ancestors once walked. His eyes held the wisdom of those who had suffered and risen. His hands, now soft from years of wealth, once knew the hardness of poverty. Richard Mensah had built his empire from nothing. From a small boy selling water on dusty streets, he had become a CEO worth billions. His company employed thousands. His name was spoken with respect in boardrooms across the world. But on this particular morning, Richard was not thinking about money. He was thinking about his daughter. Her name was Amara. She was 12 years old. Her skin was the color of midnight. Her eyes sparkled like stars over the Serengeti. Her laughter was like music from an ancient drum. Amara was not born from Richard's blood. She had come to him 4 years ago, a small child found wandering near the borders of South Sudan. War had taken her parents. Hunger had nearly taken her life. But fate had brought her to Richard's door. The moment he saw her, something stirred in his chest. The ancestors whispered to him that night in his dreams. They showed him visions of his own mother, who had died when he was young. They showed him the child's face. They told him that blood does not make family. Love does. Richard adopted Amara and gave her his name. For 4 years, she had been his greatest joy. He watched her grow strong and bright. He listened to her stories. He braided her hair on Sunday mornings while she giggled and squirmed. He taught her the old songs his grandmother once sang. To the world, Richard Mensah was a powerful CEO. To Amara, he was simply Baba, father. But lately, something had changed. Richard noticed it slowly at first. Amara came home from school quieter than before. Her laughter became rare. Her eyes lost their sparkle. When he asked about her day, she would say only one word, fine. But it was not fine. Richard could feel it in his spirit. The ancestors whispered warnings in the wind. Something was wrong with his child. Last night, he had found Amara crying in her room. When he asked what troubled her, she wiped her tears quickly and smiled. Nothing, Baba. I'm just tired. But fathers know their children. And Richard knew his daughter was hiding something painful. This morning, he made a decision. He would go to her school. He would not announce himself. He would simply appear at lunchtime to surprise her with her favorite meal, jollof rice with fried plantains, prepared by their family cook. But deep in his heart, Richard knew this was more than a surprise visit. He needed to see his daughter's world with his own eyes. He needed to understand what was stealing her joy. His assistant, a young woman named Grace, knocked on his office door. Sir, your 10 o'clock meeting with the investors is ready. Richard stood from his chair. He straightened his expensive suit. He looked out the window at the city below. Cancel it, he said. Grace's eyes widened. Cancel it, sir. But they flew in from London. They have been waiting for weeks. Let them wait longer. Richard picked up his car keys. There is something more important I must do today. He walked past Grace without another word. As he stepped into the elevator, a strange feeling settled over him. It was the feeling his grandmother once described, the feeling of spirits gathering, preparing to reveal hidden truths. Something was going to happen today, something that would change everything. Richard did not know it yet, but the ancestors were guiding his steps. They were leading him toward a moment that would break his heart and set his soul on fire. The elevator doors closed. The CEO descended toward his destiny. And somewhere across the city, in a school called Prestige Academy, a little girl named Amara sat alone, preparing to face another day of pain she had never told her father about. The wind outside began to blow. It carried the whispers of ancestors who had waited long enough. Today, the truth would come out. Prestige Academy stood like a palace among schools. Its buildings were white and grand. Its gardens were perfectly trimmed. Its gates were made of iron and gold. Only the children of the wealthy walked through those gates, the sons and daughters of politicians, business owners, and old family money. Richard had chosen this school for Amara because he wanted her to have the best teachers, the best resources, the best opportunities. Now, as his black Mercedes rolled through those golden gates, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. He parked his car far from the main entrance. He wanted to observe without being recognized. He wore simple clothes today, no expensive suit, no gold watch, just a plain shirt and trousers. He looked like any ordinary father coming to visit. The security guard barely glanced at him as he signed the visitor's book. Richard walked slowly through the corridors. The floors shone like mirrors. The walls displayed trophies and photographs of smiling students. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. He checked his watch. 11:45. Lunch would begin in 15 minutes. He planned to find the cafeteria and wait for Amara there. But as he turned a corner, he heard something that made him stop. Laughter. Not joyful laughter. This laughter was cruel. It was the laughter of hyenas circling wounded prey. Richard followed the sound. His footsteps were quiet on the polished floor. His heart began to beat faster. He came to a small courtyard behind the main building. Through a window, he could see a group of students gathered in a circle. They were older children, perhaps 14 or 15 years old. In the center of the circle stood a smaller figure. Richard's blood turned to ice. It was Amara. His daughter stood with her head bowed. Her shoulders trembled. Her hands clutched her school bag like a shield against her chest. A tall girl with long straight hair walked around Amara slowly. She was speaking, but Richard could not hear the words through the glass. Whatever she said made the other children laugh louder. Richard moved toward the door that led to the courtyard. His hands shook with growing anger. But something made him stop before pushing it open. He needed to hear. He needed to understand what his daughter faced. He pressed himself against the wall near an open window. The voices floated to him like poison in the air. "Say it again," the tall girl commanded. "Say what you really are." Amara's voice came small and broken. "Please, Victoria, leave me alone." "Leave you alone?" Victoria laughed. "But we are only telling the truth. You do not belong here. You're not really a Mensah. You're just a charity case." The other children laughed. "Your father bought you like he buys his cars," a boy added. "Except cars have value." "What value do you have?" "My father loves me," Amara whispered. "Loves you?" Victoria grabbed Amara's chin and forced her head up. "He feels sorry for you. There's a difference. You are his project, his way of looking good to the world." "Oh, look at the great Richard Mensah, saving poor African orphans." Tears streamed down Amara's face. Richard's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "You are ugly," Victoria continued. "Your skin is too dark. Your hair is too rough. You look nothing like a Mensah. Everyone knows the truth, even the teachers." "That is not true," Amara sobbed. "Then why do you sit alone at lunch every day? Why does nobody want to be your friend? Why do the teachers always look at you with pity?" Richard had heard enough. He pushed open the door with such force that it slammed against the wall. The sound echoed across the courtyard like thunder. Every child spun around to face him. Victoria's hand dropped from Amara's chin. Her face went pale with confusion. She did not recognize this man in simple clothes. She saw only an angry adult with fire burning in his eyes. "Who are you?" Victoria demanded, trying to sound brave. Richard did not answer her. He walked past the circle of children. He walked straight to his daughter. He knelt before her on the dusty ground, ruining his trousers without care. "Amara," he said softly. "My child, my heart." Amara looked up. When she saw her father's face, her eyes widened with shock, then shame, then relief so powerful that her legs gave way. Richard caught her before she fell. He held her against his chest as she sobbed, and over her shoulder, he stared at Victoria with eyes that promised a storm was coming. Richard carried his daughter to a bench at the edge of the courtyard. The other children scattered like rats fleeing light. Victoria remained frozen for a moment, her arrogance crumbling as understanding slowly dawned on her face. Then she too disappeared into the building. But Richard would deal with them later. Now, only Amara mattered. He held her until her sobs quieted. He stroked her braids gently. He whispered the old words his grandmother used to comfort him when he was small and afraid. "Madowa," he said softly. "I love you. I am here. When Amara finally lifted her head, her eyes were swollen and red. She looked at her father with such shame that it broke his heart again. "You heard everything," she whispered. "Baba, I am so sorry." "Sorry?" Richard cupped her face in his hands. "Why would you be sorry? You have done nothing wrong. I did not want you to know." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I did not want you to be ashamed of me." Richard felt as though a spear had pierced his chest. "Ashamed of you? Amara, you are my greatest pride. You are my daughter. Nothing in this world could ever make me ashamed of you. But they say I'm not really your daughter." Amara's voice cracked. "They say you only adopted me to look good. They say nobody could truly love a girl like me." Richard pulled her close again. He held her so tightly, as if he could protect her from every evil word. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "Those are lies. Wicked lies from small-minded children who do not understand what family means." He pulled back to look into her eyes. "Do you know why I adopted you, Amara?" She shook her head. "The night before I found you, I had a dream. In that dream, my mother came to me. She died when I was younger than you are now. For 30 years, I never dreamed of her. But that night, she appeared." Amara listened with wide eyes. "She told me that somewhere in the world, a child was waiting. A child who was meant to be mine. Not by blood, but by something deeper. By destiny. By love that existed before either of us was born." Richard wiped the tears from Amara's face. "When I saw you the next day, standing alone at that refugee station, I knew. My spirit recognized your spirit. You are not my charity project. You are not my way of looking good. You are my daughter, chosen by ancestors, claimed by love." Amara's lips trembled. "Truly, Baba? Truly. And I would trade my entire fortune, every building, every car, every coin, just to keep you safe and happy." For a long moment, they held each other in silence. Then Richard asked the question burning in his mind. "How long, Amara? How long has this been happening?" She hesitated. Her eyes dropped to the ground. "Since the beginning," she admitted quietly. "Since my first day at this school." Richard felt rage building inside him like a volcano preparing to erupt. "For years? You have suffered this for 4 years." Amara nodded. "It was not so bad at first. Just whispers. But when I moved to the senior section, Victoria became worse. She hates me, Baba. She tells everyone that I do not belong. The other children follow her because they are afraid. And the teachers? Surely they have seen this." Amara's silence was answer enough. Richard stood slowly. His hands curled into fists at his sides. His jaw tightened until the muscles ached. "Where's the principal's office?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Baba, please." "Where, Amara?" She pointed toward the main building. "3rd floor." "But, Baba, Mrs. Patterson, she does not like me either. She never believes me when I report problems. She always says I am being too sensitive." Richard nodded slowly. He took his daughter's hand and helped her stand. "Then it is time for Mrs. Patterson and I to have a conversation." Together, they walked toward the main building. Richard's simple clothes did nothing to hide the power radiating from him now. Staff members who saw him quickly stepped aside, sensing danger even if they did not understand it. The ancestors walked with Richard today. Their righteous anger flowed through his blood. For too long, his child had suffered in silence. She had tried to protect him from worry. She had swallowed her pain like bitter medicine. She had smiled for him when her heart was breaking. Now it was time for her father to fight for her. The storm had arrived at Prestige Academy, and it would spare no one. The door to the principal's office was made of heavy oak. Richard did not knock. He pushed it open and walked inside with Amara beside him. His presence filled the room like thunder filling the sky. Mrs. Patterson sat behind a massive desk. She was a thin woman with gray hair pulled back tightly. Her eyes were cold and sharp. She looked up at the intrusion with instant displeasure. "Excuse me, this is a private office. You cannot simply—" "I am Richard Mensah." 3 words. They fell like stones into still water. Mrs. Patterson's face changed. The irritation melted into recognition, then concern, then something that looked almost like fear. She rose quickly from her chair. "Mr. Mensah, I was not informed you would be visiting. Please sit down." Can I offer you tea? Coffee? I do not want tea. Richard remained standing. I want answers. He guided Amara to a chair and stood behind her like a guardian spirit. I have just witnessed my daughter being tormented by students in the courtyard. She tells me this has been happening for 4 years. She tells me she has reported it to staff. And she tells me nothing has ever been done. Mrs. Patterson's smile became strained. Mr. Mensah, children sometimes exaggerate. You know how young ones can be. They have small conflicts, they feel hurt, but it is rarely as serious as they believe. I saw it with my own eyes, Richard said. A girl named Victoria was humiliating my daughter. She called her ugly. She said I bought her like a car. She made her cry in front of a crowd. The principal waved her hand dismissively. Victoria is a spirited child. Perhaps her words were harsh, but I'm sure she meant no real harm. These things happen among students. They learn to resolve their differences. Resolve their differences? Richard's voice grew dangerously quiet. My daughter has been suffering in silence for 4 years. That is not a difference. That is systematic cruelty. Mrs. Patterson sighed. She removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes, as though Richard was being tiresome. Mr. Mensah, I must be honest with you. Amara is a special case. Her background is very different from our other students. She comes from difficult circumstances. Sometimes, children from such backgrounds struggle to integrate. They are overly sensitive. They misunderstand normal social interactions. Richard felt Amara tense beneath his hand. What exactly are you saying? I am saying that perhaps Prestige Academy is not the right fit for Amara. We have a certain standard, a certain culture. Some children thrive here. Others simply do not. The truth hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Richard understood now. The principal was not simply neglecting the bullying. She was protecting it. To her, Amara was an outsider who did not belong. The cruelty of other students was simply nature taking its course. Let me tell you something about my daughter, Richard said slowly. She survived a war that killed her entire village. She walked for weeks through dangerous land with no food and no water. She watched her parents die and still found the strength to keep living. He leaned forward. That is strength your precious Victoria will never have. That is the strength of Africa itself. My daughter carries the blood of survivors, of warriors, of ancestors who built kingdoms while the world watched in awe. Mrs. Patterson shrank back in her chair. Mr. Mensah, I did not mean to offend. You have done more than offend. You have failed a child in your care. You have allowed her to be abused while you look the other way. And you have just told me, to my face, that she does not belong here because of where she comes from. Richard straightened to his full height. I built Mensah Towers from dust. I employ 3,000 people. I pay more taxes in 1 year than this entire school costs to run. He smiled coldly. And I have made many donations to this academy. Very generous donations. I wonder what the school board would think if those donations suddenly disappeared. I wonder what the newspapers would think if they learned how you treat children here. Mrs. Patterson's face went white. Mr. Mensah, please. Let's not be hasty. I am sure we can find a solution. You will find a solution, Richard agreed. Victoria and every student who participated in bullying my daughter will face consequences. Real consequences. You will implement proper protection for all students who are different, and you will personally apologize to Amara. He took his daughter's hand. We will wait outside while you make some phone calls. Because by the end of this day, Mrs. Patterson, things at Prestige Academy will change forever. Word spread through Prestige Academy like wildfire across dry savannah. Richard Mensah was here, the billionaire, the legend, and he was angry. Within an hour, the school board had been contacted. Victoria's parents, a wealthy politician and his wife, arrived in a panic. Teachers gathered in corridors, whispering nervously. Students stared through windows, watching the drama unfold. Richard waited in the main hall with Amara beside him. He had called his lawyers. He had called his media contacts. He had made it clear that today's events would not be quietly buried. The ancestors stood with him. He could feel their presence in the air, their ancient power flowing through his veins. Victoria was brought to the hall by her parents. The girl who had seemed so powerful in the courtyard now looked small and terrified. Her mother gripped her arm tightly. Her father, a man named Senator Williams, walked ahead with his chest puffed out, trying to look important. "Mr. Mensah," Senator Williams said, extending his hand. "Surely we can discuss this like reasonable men. Children fight. It is nothing serious. My Victoria is a good girl." Richard did not take his hand. "Your good girl," he said, "told my daughter that she is worthless. She told her that I bought her like property. She made her cry. For years, she has tormented Amara, and your good girl enjoyed every moment." Senator Williams bristled. "Now see here. My daughter comes from one of the most respected families in this country. You cannot simply accuse her. I'm not accusing. I'm telling you what I witnessed with my own eyes. Perhaps your daughter provoked." "Provoked?" Richard stepped closer. A child sitting quietly provoked an attack? A girl who just wants to learn provoked humiliation? He turned to Victoria, who trembled under his gaze. "Look at my daughter, Victoria. Look at her." Victoria slowly raised her eyes to meet Amara's. "Do you see a charity case? Do you see someone worthless?" Richard's voice was calm but thunderous. "Let me tell you what I see. I see a girl who lost everything and still found a way to smile. I see a child who suffered more in her first 8 years than you will suffer in your entire pampered life." Tears began to stream down Victoria's face. "I did not mean. I was just. You were cruel because it made you feel powerful. You attacked what you did not understand. And you hurt someone who never did anything to harm you." Senator Williams tried to intervene. "This has gone far enough. I will not have my daughter humiliated." "Humiliated?" Richard laughed bitterly. "Your daughter has been humiliating mine for years. Perhaps a single moment of shame will teach her what her victims feel every day." He turned to address everyone gathered in the hall. Teachers, staff, parents, students watching from doorways. "Let this be a lesson for all of you. The worth of a person is not measured by their blood or their background. It is not measured by the color of their skin or the straightness of their hair. It is measured by the content of their heart." He placed his hand on Amara's shoulder. "This child is my daughter, not because I signed papers, not because I want to look good, but because love chose her for me and me for her. She is a Mensah in every way that matters." Amara looked up at her father with shining eyes. "Anyone who harms her," Richard continued, "harms me, and I protect what is mine." Mrs. Patterson appeared at the edge of the crowd. Her face was pale with defeat. "Mr. Mensah," she said quietly, "the school board has agreed to your terms. Victoria will be suspended. A full investigation will be conducted. New anti-bullying policies will be implemented immediately." Richard nodded once. Then he looked at Victoria, whose tears had ruined her makeup, whose arrogance had crumbled to dust. "I do not wish to destroy you, child," he said, more gently now. "I wish to teach you. Cruelty is weakness. Kindness is strength. Remember that, and you may still become someone worthy of respect." He turned to Senator Williams. "Teach your daughter better, before the world does it for you in harsher ways." Then Richard took Amara's hand and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted before them, like water before a great ship. Father and daughter walked into the afternoon sun, and behind them, Prestige Academy would never be the same again. That evening, Richard and Amara sat together on the balcony of their home. The sun was setting over Johannesburg, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In the distance, the city lights began to flicker like earthbound stars. A gentle wind carried the scent of flowers from the garden below. Amara leaned against her father's shoulder. For the first time in months, she looked peaceful. "Baba," she said softly, "thank you for today." Richard kissed the top of her head. "You never need to thank me for protecting you. That is what fathers do." "I was afraid to tell you," she admitted. I thought if I complained too much, you would regret choosing me." Richard's heart ached at her words. "Amara, listen to me carefully. There is nothing you could ever do that would make me regret choosing you. Nothing. You are my blessing. You are the answer to prayers I did not even know I was praying." She smiled softly. "Will Victoria hate me more now? Perhaps, but she will not dare touch you again. And maybe, with time, she will learn. People can change, Amara. Even cruel ones. We must leave room for that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge one by one. Then Amara asked, Baba, tell me again about your dream. The one where your mother came to you. Richard smiled, his eyes growing distant with memory. It was the night before I found you. I was sitting in my office, feeling alone despite all my success. My mother appeared, young and beautiful as I remembered her from childhood. She said, My son, your heart has been empty for too long. Tomorrow, you'll find the one who is meant to fill it. And then you found me. And then I found you. Richard nodded, standing in that dusty refugee station, wearing a dress 2 sizes too big, with the bravest eyes I had ever seen. I knew immediately. The ancestors had sent me a daughter. Amara wrapped her arms around her father. I'm glad they sent me to you, Baba. So am I, my child. So am I. The wind picked up, carrying the distant sound of drums from somewhere in the city. Perhaps a celebration. Perhaps a ceremony. The rhythm was ancient, connecting them to generations past. Richard thought about the day's events. He thought about Victoria, about Mrs. Patterson, about all the people who had looked at his daughter and seen only an outsider. They were blind. They could not see what he saw, the strength, the beauty, the resilience. They judged by shallow things like skin and status and origin. But the ancestors saw truly. They knew that family was not about blood. It was about love. It was about choice. It was about showing up for each other when the world turned cruel. Amara, Richard said, Do you remember the old proverb I taught you? The one from Ghana. She thought for a moment, then recited slowly, If there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. Yes. Richard nodded. Those children try to put doubt inside your heart. They wanted you to believe you were less than them. But you are not. You are more. Never let anyone make you feel small for things beyond your control. I will remember, Baba. And one more thing. He turned to face her directly. When you grow up and become great, and you'll become great, remember this day. Remember what it felt like to be treated as less than, and make sure you never treat anyone else that way. I promise. Richard pulled her close one final time. The drums in the distance grew louder, as if the ancestors themselves were celebrating. The stars shone brighter. The wind whispered secrets only fathers and daughters could understand. Tomorrow, there would be more challenges. The world would always have people who judged unfairly, who hurt without reason, who failed to see true worth. But tonight there was peace. Tonight there was love. And that love was stronger than any cruelty, older than any prejudice, more powerful than any empire. Richard Mensah had built towers of glass and steel. He had amassed wealth beyond measure. He had become a name spoken with reverence across continents. But his greatest achievement sat beside him on that balcony. A girl named Amara, chosen by fate, claimed by love, forever his daughter. The moral of the story: family is not made by blood alone. It is built by love, strengthened by sacrifice, and proven through action. The ones who lift you up when the world pushes you down are your true family. Protect those you love fiercely, stand against cruelty boldly, and never let anyone define your worth by things beyond your control. For in the eyes of the ancestors, every child is precious, every soul has value, and love will always triumph over hate.